All right. I believe we are live. Welcome back. Another week of the FlurrySports Fantasy Start Sit Show. I mislabeled the show last week as NFL Week 2. I was thrown off by not having done a stream the first couple of weeks. It was Week 3 last week, and it's Week 4 this week. So here we are live to talk a little Start Sit. Week 4 joining me, same as last week, Zach Espinoza, but we have another guest in waiting. Going to bring him live right now. It is our fearless leader.
Hey, what's up?
How's it going? How's it going? We got music. Right. Yeah, we should have overlaid that a little bit. But Zach, how are you, my friend? We have not streamed together in quite some time.
It has been a while. Was it like our sports betting streams like a couple summers ago, basically?
I think it was definitely prior to our Cleveland/Canton trip. So yeah, quite a while back. That probably was the last time, but happy to have you here. I thought I had a line cooked up in my head. I was going to say, I'm flanked on either side by a Zach here, but Restream ended up putting me on the far left. So I guess, whatever. But right before we dive deep into the stream here, want to remind you, we are presented, by Prize Picks tonight, our great friends and partners over at Prize Picks. If you head on over there, use the code FLURRY, FLURRY. They're going to give you a deposit match up to $100. Really easy to make money over there, whether it's on NBA, NFL, hockey's coming up real soon, NHL. Keep an eye out for some of those articles coming up. They got MLS, MLB, PGA. Anyway, that you want to bet on some sports, try and make some money, do it over at Prize Picks and using the code FLURRY, deposit match up to $100. All right, we have a ton to cover tonight. I at least brought a ton of my own. Last week at this point, we had a ton of questions in the chat already, so definitely want to encourage you to toss those up. If you are watching, if you're watching a replay of the stream, you can still tweet at any one of us, tweet at the main Flurry Sports account, and we will try and give you our very best advice. But until we field some of those questions, I guess we can kind of just dive right in to the prep that I got here. Starting with running backs, we talked a lot last week about two running backs that are on the same team, right? A younger guy, when's he going to overtake the older guy? Who's got the usage, who doesn't? Another set of running backs has come into question here, and that is Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery. Now, Khalil Herbert he's been a machine when he's been able to touch the ball early on this season. He's the RB6, 3 total touchdowns, whereas David Montgomery, running back, 36. No touchdowns. I think Montgomery has rushed the ball a couple more times, but Herbert is also has the ability to catch the ball as well. Zach, this isn't going to work, so we'll go Zach Espinoza. I'll just use full names here. Since you were on the stream last week, and we kind of talked quite a bit about this, what's your opinion on Khalil Herbert and Montgomery? Is Herbert? He seems like the guy right now in Chicago, but fantasy-wise, is Montgomery a guy that you can kind of set aside? And, a lot of people out there might have both these running backs on their roster, same as, the Breece Halls that we were talking about last week, the ETNs and Robinsons. This is another situation where somebody might have both these guys. Is it Herbert over Montgomery right now without question?
Without question? I don't know if it's for me to say without question. However, because I'm so prepared, I want you guys to see this. You can see behind me. I don't know how much you can see, but I actually drew some on the whiteboard, getting us a little plug in there, FlurrySports.org.
Very nice.
And then I have a segment later for the fence up there, because I hate being on the fence. But I'm not on the fence about this. You want to know why? Because the fence is an addition to sit at. Why are you going to stick that up your butt? Choose a side, all right? Khalil Herbert is a nice handcuff to have. David Montgomery is looking to be on his way out. I don't know his contract situation, but Herbert clearly was drafted to make an impact on offense, and he has done that so far. So I'm riding on the Herbert train.
Well, and it seems like Montgomery has been the starter. He's been the number one guy in the depth chart, but he's been outplayed by 2 or 3 different backs in Chicago now since arriving there. Tariq Cohen a couple of times outplayed him. He had another backup that I can't quite remember. Zach
from
Bruner.
Kansas City.
Yeah, could have been. You think Montgomery is just is his time as the guy in Chicago kind of a little bit over with? And are they going to see what they got cooking in Herbert here? Or are things going to kind of pendulum back eventually?
Well, I mean, he's injured this week, so I think people who own both are going to have that decided for them. I don't think Montgomery plays this week, so Herbert's, good to go. Otherwise, Herbert's a better fit for this current offensive scheme. They moved it to some of that move sort of college style, and Herbert's more decisive. He's just that one cut guy and gets up the field, so he's better for the scheme. But running back's such a tricky position to move, so I think Montgomery's still going to continue to be the guy. I just don't think he's going to be as effective as he should be. And if somehow the Bears offense picks up and becomes somewhat efficient, I think Montgomery's going to be the red zone guy. But at this point, I don't know how many times we can trust them to even be in the red zone. So I think Montgomery's a flex, and I think Herbert is a handcuff with a ton of upside, basically.
Definitely fair. And the NFC North actually has a lot of this going on right now where, there's the main guy who's a little bit banged up and the backup has played very well. You can look at Madison, who's been a pretty reliable backup for Dalvin Cook in the past. Dalvin Cook's a little bit banged up. But more importantly, let's look at Detroit for a second here. Jamal Williams, he was the RB2 this week. He's the RB8 overall on the season, 8 to 10, depending on your scoring system here. He has 4 total touchdowns. Has Jamal Williams elevated himself to an automatic start, at least for the next 2 weeks? Because rumor has it DeAndre Swift is going to be out through the bye week. Now, Detroit has a very early bye week, I think week 6. His next 2 opponents are Seattle and New England. Not exactly, the most threatening opponents. Is Jamal Williams upgraded to an automatic start for you the next 2 weeks, Zach Bruner?
Yeah, he's a top 10 guy for me this week. He was already a flex, from week 1. I think as a site, just overall, we've been higher on Jamal Williams than the rest of the consensus. And a good reason for that is a lot of us are Packer fans. A lot of us have seen Jamal Williams play, and a lot of us know Jamal Williams is good at football. Obviously we get to see the Lions twice a year as well. So, yeah, Jamal Williams, good player. Jamal Williams has value regardless if DeAndre Swift plays. And luckily, DeAndre Swift isn't going to play. So, yes, top 10 guy for me. No brainer. Start him over people even like Javonte Williams.
Right now, DeAndre Swift through 3 weeks, the number 5 overall back. Jamal Williams, the number 8 overall back, according to fantasypros.com. Pretty dang good for the Detroit Lions. 2 top 10 guys in there. And then, like Zach alluded to, with Swift out, it only elevates Jamal Williams from a flex to definitely one of your starting running backs. We got a kicker question here. 16-man league. Should he drop Matt Prater for Jason Sanders? I think there's going to be a couple field goals tonight, but Jason Sanders, I think, is ranked 20th. And Matt Prater always he hasn't kicked a ton of field goals, but he's got that massive leg. He can get you 5-6 points at a time, depending on your scoring, by hitting a 58, 60, 61 yard or whatever it is. I think in that game, anytime that the Carolina Panthers are playing, it seems like there's 80 field goals anyways. I think that's going to be a heavy field goal game this weekend. I love the Cardinals. Might be my best bet of the weekend. Love the Cardinals this weekend. So I would keep Matt Prater personally.
Yeah, 100%. The Cardinals have been playing from behind the entire season so far, which isn't conducive to kicking field goals. They need to be going for it and stuff, but they play the Panthers this week, which is good to go. To your point, I have Sanders ranked 20th. I have Prater ranked 21st. I will probably raise him up a little bit. But yeah, I like Prater. I don't think the first 2 weeks I don't think you can take any value away from it, basically.
Yeah, like you said, the game situation has just hurt Prater a ton when you're trying to come back from 20-0 in the second half or whatever that score was. You're not settling for field goals very often. I definitely like Matt Prater. I think Sanders is just a guy who, will kick a field goal or two when needed. But I also think Mike, their new coach, Mike McDonald, is that his name? Mike
McDaniel.
McDaniel. Thank you. I think he seems more of a kind of go for it guy, and I'd rather scheme something up, to go for 4th and 4 from my own 35 rather than kick a field goal or whatever it is. So I don't love Sanders, but thank you for the question. Right back into running backs. This is something I'm personally struggling with. I ended up with Cordell Patterson and James Robinson, both on my team, with a couple of actual starting running backs. Now, Patterson and Robinson have both played themselves into the number 3 and 4 fantasy back spots, I believe, or 3 and 5, but they're both top 5. So I want to kind of propose this question a little bit differently. But of those top names, somebody like me, I'll just tell you straight up, I have Aaron Jones, Christian McCaffrey, Patterson, and Robinson. So probably there are some people who have those two must-start guys who are big names in your 2 running back spots, but then you're kind of fighting for a flex position. How far down the list would you go right now to start Patterson over Robinson, or Patterson Robinson over some of these guys? Like, are you starting them over a Jones or a McCaffrey or Jonathan Taylor, Derrick Henry, Najee Harris, Dalvin Cook? How many of those guys, how deep does it go where you're starting Patterson and Robinson right now? It's hard to go away from those guys or sit one of those guys when they're both a top 5 back. And even though those other guys were drafted so much higher, they're just struggling right now. Dalvin Cook all the way down in the 30s, Derrick Henry mid-20s, guys like that. Who are you absolutely refusing to sit in favor of Patterson and Robinson, I guess would be a better way to phrase that?
Espinoza, you can go first.
Absolutely refusing to sit over that? Let's take a look at my my board here. You know what? Who I'm not going to sit over that? I'm going to go with Breece Hall. I'm riding high on that Breece Hall train. Michael Carter seems to be on his way out. It's just like a Khalil Herbert situation. Breece Hall was the workhorse at Iowa State. Zach Wilson is returning into the Jets offense this week. If I'm not mistaken, I think they're riding high on that train, and they're just going to keep on chugging.
And for me, Breece Hall all the way down at 17, relatively easy decision to start one of those guys over Breece Hall. But Zach Bruner, of all those big names that I listed, is there anybody that you have conviction of that you would sit in favor of one of these 2 guys?
Well, I have Cordell, again, half PPR, since that's what Fantasy Pros grades me on. I have Cordell ranked 11th. I have Aaron Jones ranked 14th. I have James Robinson ranked 18th. The only thing I refuse to do is discredit and offend Cordell Patterson. I warned all of you in the preseason, stop doubting him. All Cordell Patterson does is produce. Like, stop. The dude's a good football player, and everyone's like, okay, well, last season was cute. And a lot of people had him as like the 40th ranked running back this year, and it makes no sense. Like, just keep playing him until he gets hurt, essentially, because he's going to be good regardless.
Yeah, I mean, he's such a weapon, and with Mariota, you got 2 kind of gadget guys back there. It's just, I think it's only good, even better for him getting away from a Matt Ryan, boring pocket style offense. So yeah, I that was a personal problem, but I feel like a lot of people probably got a Patterson or a Robinson way down the board, and now are, you have that dilemma when you're talking fantasy where it's like, oh, it's so hard to sit Dalvin Cook, or it's so hard to sit Derrick Henry or whatever. But if that's, those are the hard choices you got to make to win your league sometimes. So we got a few more questions here. Jokes on You says, thank you. Let me bring up the question here. It says, who should I start at running back and flex? I have Jamal Williams, Jeff Wilson Jr., Rashad Penny, Ramondre Stevenson, Treylon Burks. So far I have Williams and Wilson Jr. in those slots. A lot of options. Like we already talked about, I think Jamal Williams off the top has got to be probably in that running back slot for you. And then you can play around with flex. Zach Bruner, a lot of names here. What do you think?
I have Wilson as the next highest guy. Playing the Rams this week, I don't think the 49ers are going to be especially productive, but I don't know how many downfield shots they can take against the Rams either. So I think Wilson's going to be even more involved in the receiving game this week. 3 catches for 31 last week. He had over 100 total yards last week. If he even just fell into the end zone against the Broncos, like everyone would be considering him as a high-end RB2 this week. So I think just, throw that out the window. Let's just pretend Jeff Wilson is the guy in the 49ers, which he is. So reluctantly play him, even though he's not that good of a football player.
And, he was one of those guys that were drafted, running back. It's like once the top guys go, you almost got to overdraft a lot of these guys, or otherwise you end up at the bottom of the list with just nobody. So definitely a guy that you would love to be able to play in these situations as well. Any counterpoint here from you, Espinoza? We talked a little bit about Jeff Wilson last week. Rashad Penny, he was moving the ball last week for Seattle. Any love for him there, or anybody over the two that we specified already?
Yes, I'm going to go with Stevenson. Mac Jones is hurt. Damian Harris and Stevenson are committee. All the reports were writing Stevenson over Harris, and for good reason too. I mean, he gets the ball. He is a big back. He can be the back in the end zone. He can be the back in the red zone as well. I think it's just a matter of who has the hotter hand, Damian Harris or Stevenson, and I'm willing to gamble on Stevenson.
All right. Beautiful. So there you go. I think we keyed in on 3 players there. So go with your gut, ride with the 2, or the 1. You got to take Jamal Williams. So follow your gut and with the other one. All right. Switching gears to wide receivers here. Again, thank you all for the questions. Keep them coming. Says he has Drake London, Rashad Bateman, CeeDee Lamb, and Jerry Jeudy. Now, Zach Bruner, if I remember correctly, you've been a Jerry Jeudy hater for quite some time, I believe,
Yep.
Correct?
Yeah.
All right. So,
great footwork
thoughts here.
If we're trying to make an Instagram training video, give me Jerry Jeudy. If we're trying to get fantasy points, we're going to just keep sitting him. First off, T, thank you for liking the stream. Everyone else watching, definitely do that and subscribe as well. I'm for sure going CeeDee Lamb, and then I think it's going to be Drake London, but let me look at my rankings really quick. Yeah, it's Drake London. I have him at 17. So I like those 2.
So, Zach, CeeDee Lamb, 4.9 points the first week. All of a sudden, Cooper Rush steps in, and CeeDee Lamb has nearly 40 points the next couple of weeks. He gets to play Washington this week. You high on CeeDee Lamb this week? I think for the consensus is mostly everybody is, and he had a big drop that would have added maybe another 5, 6, 8 points, who knows, to his week last week. CeeDee Lamb with the Cooper Rush pairing, been pretty good so far.
With me, Zach, or Zach Bruner?
Yeah,
Zach?
You, Zach.
Oh, wait, or this way. I don't know which way you guys are on the stream. I'm going CeeDee Lamb. I'm writing that. He is the only receiver in Dallas. No, consistent as well, but CeeDee Lamb is 88 for a reason. He got permission to wear that. They're going to give it to CeeDee Lamb. Cooper Rush has been playing his life on the line in Dallas. He's wanting to have a competition with Dak Prescott. And I'm actually going to switch to Bateman over Jerry Jeudy. I was really high on the train in that Denver offense, but dear Lord, Russ cooking has been a bowl of cereal at best.
Yeah.
Maybe throwing in some ketchup in there just to add insult to injury. But, I mean, Lamar Jackson is playing his mind out. He didn't get that contract, much to everyone's chagrin, much to the Baltimore, evidently, possibly. So I am taking Bateman over CeeDee Lamb. I mean, Bateman with CeeDee Lamb to pick 2.
By the way, Russell Wilson's definitely a guy who thinks ketchup is spicy, right?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. He doesn't even touch it.
Hey, there's 2 different kinds of peppers on that Subway sandwich. You got to give them some respect.
Fair enough.
I also want to throw a Drake. I mean, this is tough because Drake London has been. I don't love his matchup against Cleveland. I think the Falcons will maybe struggle the most offensively this week that they have so far. But I would give some sort of – I like Drake London outside of this week. I guess I'll just say that. Let's transition, though, to some wide receiver talk since you guys brought up – or since Espinoza, you brought up a little bit of Lamar. I want to talk about some waiver wire prospects here just a little bit. So, again, on Fantasy Pros, they rank them, I think, just based on overall points scored. So these are the 19th, 20th, and 21st, all right in a row, fantasy scoring wide receivers. And they're available in a ton of leagues. So starting with Devin Duvernay, he's wide receiver 21 right now. He's available in 81% of ESPN leagues, only 40% of sleeper leagues. Now, I don't know if players or fantasy players that use sleeper are just a little sharper or there's less overall on the platform. I'm not quite sure, but these players that are available 70, 80, 90% of leagues in ESPN, they're usually about half that in sleeper leagues. So if you do use sleeper, you're going to want to get on these players even quicker. But Devin Duvernay had – my question was why are so many people not picking them up? He's only rostered in 19% of leagues. Now, he has 3 touchdowns for 44 points. He only has 8 targets, but he has 8 receptions on those 8 targets for 121 yards. When you compare him to a guy like, say, Greg Dortch, who's also available in 82% of ESPN leagues, he's only got 1 touchdown, but he has 20 receptions and 200 yards. So if you're kind of looking at these guys, I got 1 bench spot here. Are you going for the guy who has more touchdowns but way less looks? Or are you going for the guy who's getting looks but not finding the end zone quite as much? Zach Bruner, first of all, your thoughts overall on Duvernay, because I think he's a really interesting fantasy prospect right now. And then just comparing him to a guy like Dortch or even a Mac Hollins, who I was going to touch on as well, but he's just in such a crowded offense out in Oakland, I think, out in Las Vegas. I think, he's kind of the third option here. But between Duvernay and Dortch, why are these guys only rostered in less than 20% of leagues?
Yeah, people who watch the Wednesday show are probably sick of me talking about Devin Duvernay. I love this guy. He's clearly the wide receiver 2. He's been clearly the wide receiver 2. He'll continue to be, out of the guys you've named, he's the only one who has a clear defined role that's here now and it's going to be at the end of the season. Like Dortch is going to be irrelevant in a couple of weeks. Obviously, Rondale Moore's coming back. DeAndre Hopkins is coming back. Matt Collins is a great story. Is good for a nice pun on the FlurrySports podcast. That's about it. He has been irrelevant his entire career. He'll continue to be. But Devin Duvernay, people are low on him. You talked about 3 touchdowns. He's actually got 4 because he had that return touchdown as well. 2 targets in back-to-back weeks doesn't scream like a big role, but the Ravens have been largely in control of both of these games as well. They haven't been having to be super aggressive throwing the football. Coming up, they got Buffalo this week. They got the Bengals after that. The Ravens are going to actually have to try on offense, and I think Duvernay is going to be a little bit better in those games as well. So I love Duvernay, and people were disrespecting him, including me, coming into this year, because I kept saying the Ravens need that deep threat. They need that element of the offense. People forget Duvernay is that. People forget he was a 3rd-round draft pick a couple years ago. This is his 3rd year. This is typically the breakout year for wide receivers, and I think we're going to see that with Duvernay.
And they're trying a little something he had 2 rushing attempts last week against New England. So maybe they're trying to get him a couple extra looks or maybe try and use him a little bit in like a Deebo Samuel type style. But like you said, only two targets each of the last 2 weeks, but he has not every ball that's come his way this season, he's reeled it in, and he's had 54 yards, 42 yards, 25 yards, and 3 offensive touchdowns. So the quantity isn't there, but he's producing at a crazy high rate. 2 weeks ago against Miami, he had 2 catches for an average of 21 yards. Pretty darn good. So I think definitely you seem to be in agreement that he's a top waiver wire target right now. I can't think of anybody else that you should be rushing to pick, especially for he's only rostered in 19% of leagues. That pretty much blows my mind. Espinoza, do you think there's any sort of life? I tend to agree with other Zach here where, Dortch and Hollins are just – they're they're benefiting from the situations that they're in right now. They're surrounded by injuries, and Hollins goes off 8 catches, 158 yards, and a touchdown. Definitely not sustainable, especially with all the competition in that offense. But do you agree? Duvernay's you got to go out and get him right now. I mean, what's the backlash? What's the argument against going and picking him up? Is it simply just the ball's not going to come his direction?
Argument against him. Well, let's look at Dortch. Dortch is this smaller slot receiver in Arizona. Hopkins isn't there. Marquise Brown has been inconsistent, I would say. I'm sure he's had the games, but he's also had the drops, and he's had the drops his entire career. And the argument that you could play your way into the system. So maybe he doesn't sustain himself at the same rate once DeAndre Hopkins comes back, but that doesn't mean that he's not going to get the ball any further. He might try to get it in rushes. He might try to get it in punt returns, but it's a PPR world that we live in. I'm going with those receptions and those targets. If Duvernay isn't getting as much targets, but he's getting more boom for your buck, I'll take the safer pick, and I'll go for Dortch.
I'm willing to bet Duvernay has more receptions than Dortch this week.
Who's Arizona playing?
Yeah, Arizona plays Carolina.
Carolina, yeah.
I think Arizona wins that.
Well, my whole thing, I don't think DeAndre Hopkins really should be a worry with Dortch. I think Dortch, he's just playing the Rondale Moore role, which was the Christian Kirk role last year. Rondale Moore supposedly is going to play this week, so we shall see. So it'll be interesting to see if they play those two on the field together, because I don't think they will. I think it's going to be Marquise Brown, AJ Green, and Dortch.
On Rondale Moore, but that's just me.
Me neither, but I think the Cardinals invested too much in him not to play him.
Fair.
We got a couple big name receivers to figure out what to do with here, which we're going to get to in a second. But Mport216 wants to transition back to running backs for just a second. He says, who should I start? Now, I'm assuming he can only start one. Craig Reynolds, Rashad Penny, or Cam Akers. Craig Reynolds, I think, touches the ball a couple times, might have a few dump-offs, whatever, but I really think it's going to be Williams for 95% of the snaps this weekend for the Lions. Craig Reynolds is just kind of a guy who's there to fill a spot in my mind. Penny looked pretty decent last week. Has a somewhat favorable matchup, but Cam Akers remains a mystery. He remains an enigma. I don't know what to make of him. Bruner, you've got him in our dynasty league. People are waiting for him to kind of be what he was supposed to be before his injury last year. Who are you taking out of these three guys?
Really quick, Mport says he has to start 2. So I would be sitting Craig Reynolds.
Yeah, that makes it much easier if you're starting 2. Yeah, Craig Reynolds is just not – the volume's not going to be there quite – unless he breaks off like a 90-yard rush,
Yeah, I like Penny the best out of the 3. I dislike Cam Akers in matchups where the Rams have to face talented pass rush, because I think Henderson's going to see the field more to pass protect. And I like Penny's matchup against the Lions. Like, I think he's going to be the lead guy. Even though I wish Ken Walker would get the ball more, it sure seems like Seattle's really easing him in. So I think Penny's going to see the majority of the snaps and carries until the wheels fall off, which with him is probably pretty soon. So for now, I think just play him.
And I mean, if you can luck into a touchdown, you should be sitting all right, because he's getting the attempts, mid-teens attempts, and he's had over 60 yards in 2 of his 3 games so far this season. So he's producing well enough to give you a decent fantasy day if he can just stumble into the end zone, which I think he might be able to do against Detroit. Yeah, he said that's kind of what he was thinking as well. Thank you. You're welcome. That is what we are here for. Nice and simple. So let's go back to wide receivers. What do we make of Chris Olave? He was drafted pretty high, paired up with Jameis Winston. Nobody knew what Michael Thomas was really going to be at the beginning of the year. Was he going to sit out? Was he going to be injured? Was he going to come back and play like his normal self? Olave started out very slow, but had a breakout week last week. Obviously, he's now up to wide receiver 22. The thing about New Orleans, they had 3 straight division games to start the season. Now they got to travel across the ocean to play their first out-of-division opponent. Jameis Winston has a broken back or a few broken vertebrae, whatever it is. Is this a spot where you fade Chris Olave after that monster week just with everything surrounding the Saints? Or was this a game that he says, hey, I'm here, I solidified myself for real, you at least got to consider me as a flex option? What do we make of Chris Olave here, Zac Brown?
I love Olave as a player. I think he's a really, really good player. I just don't know if I trust this offense even still. Like, I understand they've been doing fine. Will Winston play? I don't know. Is Andy Dalton a downgrade? I don't know. And is Olave the top wide receiver? Kind of. Like, I'm just trying to bring up where he was lining up a little bit right now. I think he might see top coverage with Michael Thomas probably playing in the slot. And again, it's the Vikings. Yeah, Olave is pretty much all outside work, a little bit in the slot. Like, I like him. I think he's a flex. I just don't think we can predict a 180, 75-yard type of day, especially this week. I think maybe in the future. But, yeah, we need to get that quarterback situation sorted out.
And Espinoza, talk about this game in general. There's quite a few people to consider fantasy-wise, actually, especially if Dalvin Cook plays in this game. Is there anybody you're avoiding, or do you have any hesitance when it comes to these overseas games? I mean, you're talking about, each quarterback you could consider starting. There's multiple wide receivers on both teams, Alvin Kamara, Dalvin Cook, all these guys. There's a lot to consider here in this. I think it's a London game. It's definitely out of the country. Is there anybody you're avoiding, or do you ever have any hesitance with these overseas games?
Not in this game. I'm staying away from the Saints defense. I know we were just talking about the wide receiver position, but it's like we were saying, the offense is inconsistent at best. We don't know if Jameis is going to be playing. We don't know if Andy Dalton is a downgrade. Minnesota's offense is to be reckoned with. It's a 9 a.m. game, so let's go ahead and say that that's good for Kirk Cousins. I don't know if the primetime morning slot is going to get to his head, but I don't think so. I think something about the earth shifting changes his equilibrium. So I don't think that the Saints defense is ever going to have good position with the field. And I think is going to get off. I mean, think about it. The NFL would go if Justin Jefferson had a great game in London. We would not stop hearing about that for like a solid week. It'd make the highlight reel, make the posters. It's going to be a Justin Jefferson world.
Yeah, and obviously there's a few big name players that are going to be must starts. But the difference to me in this game is like I said, there's 5, maybe 6 people that really can take some fantasy consideration in this game, when a lot of times over there's like maybe one person of relevance in the fantasy world that's playing in those games. There's quite a few in this one. So I just thought that was kind of interesting and wanted your guys' thoughts there. Wale Dahir, who I believe has been in the stream with us before. I think he joined us last week as well. Welcome back. He wants to know, bench Russell Wilson for Marcus Mariota, and right now until otherwise, that's a resounding yes. Marcus Mariota, one of the top performing quarterbacks in the entire league right now, and Russell Wilson it looks like he had surgery on his hand, every single week. He just doesn't. He doesn't look good right now. There's no continuity in that offense, whereas the Falcons, they got a lot of weapons. And I think they got a belief in themselves right now, too, that the Denver Broncos, despite being 2-1, just don't seem to have. I don't think we need to spend too much time on this one. I'm definitely benching Russell Wilson for Marcus Mariota. I would also bench guys like Aaron Rodgers for Marcus Mariota right now. I think Mariota's play him until, kind of like Zach said earlier, play him until the wheels fall off kind of guy right now, especially if you're dealing with an injury or you're somebody who goes into the season planning to stream quarterbacks. Mariota's a pretty darn good pickup who's actually available in way more ESPN leagues than he should be. You guys concur with this, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So
Consensus has Russell Wilson as a top 10 guy this week. I'm significantly lower on him. I'm at 16. Yeah. Mariota at 14. So
Mariota is rostered in 27% of ESPN leagues. Definitely a guy that's worth going and pick up.
And that's why we don't like ESPN.
Right.
And I think it's my first year not having a league there, which I'm proud of.
Yep. I have just too many people are too ingrained, and I'm slowly moving over to Sleeper. I still got like 4 on ESPN here, but ESPN has him ranked as the number 13 overall quarterback. And they got Russell Wilson ranked as the 23rd. So take that for what you will.
Jesus.
Mariota also. Wow. Yeah. So, all right. Well, I think they rank them. I don't know what they're whole judging base off of, but I assume it's overall points and whatever else. But yeah, 23 for Russell Wilson. Not that great. Our last wide receiver that we want to talk about, I believed in him last week. I didn't think he was going to have as big of a week as he did. I asked you this question last week about what I thought was the security blanket in Amari Cooper for Jacoby Brissett. Amari Cooper looks way better than he looked probably pretty much at any point in Dallas. Looks like a young man again. He's just finding open spots in the field. Over 50% of Jacoby Brissett's passes have gone to Amari Cooper. Over 50%. Shout out coach for that stat. Amari Cooper is able to get open right now. He's not dropping balls like he had a problem way early on in his career. And Jacoby Brissett is looking for him above anybody else. Amari Cooper has to be in your lineup moving forward, doesn't he? Espinoza, I'll let you try and redeem yourself here.
I think he must have listened to us before the game because he played like he had a vengeance against us. I spoke Luke, but I mean, it's like he said, it's 50% of the ball or 50% of passes. Who else is on Cleveland's roster for pass catching? David Njoku, maybe. I personally don't buy into David Njoku. Kareem Hunt's not going to be getting 50% of shares to take away from him. Donovan Peoples-Jones game. I don't think it's going to be in terms of receptions, just in terms of big yardage plays. It's Amari Cooper or nobody in Cleveland for their pass catching scheme.
Yeah, he's been targeted 21 times in the last 2 weeks. Identical stat lines, 101 yards and a touchdown each of the last 2 weeks against the Jets. Take that for what it's worth. But then he repeated it against Pittsburgh, short week on Thursday night. Now he gets to face Atlanta. I think he's a definite start. And I don't think he's a guy either. He's going to become so comfortable over these first 11 weeks. And if he continues to perform, I don't think Deshaun Watson is the kind of quarterback where you have to he steps in and you have to reevaluate all these position players. I think if he's been this effective with Jacoby Brissett, he shouldn't take that large of a step back when Deshaun Watson steps in. Bruner, you are questioning that maybe. Do you think he's just that comfortable with Jacoby Brissett, or do you think Watson will spread the ball around more, or what do you think the future holds for Amari Cooper?
The Browns have played the Panthers, Jets, and Steelers without TJ Watt. Amari Cooper gets to play indoors where he has traditionally been good in his career this week against another bad defense. If you have Amari Cooper, sell him immediately after this week. I think he's going to take a complete nosedive. Then he gets to play the Chargers, the Patriots, the Ravens, the Bengals, the Dolphins, the Bills, the Buccaneers. All of the rest of his games are outside the rest of the way. Once it gets cold and he's outside, he's absolutely horrendous. If he's not injured, he's just going to be bad. So definitely play him this week.
I'd make an argument for after next week, after the Jags. Jags essentially shut out the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, J.C. Jackson's probably going to be healthy and playing then, though.
Well,
and if not,
I'd say next week. I could see.
When do they play Jacksonville? I'm looking at their schedule right now. I don't even see Jacksonville.
No, he's saying Jacksonville shut out the Chargers.
Oh, after okay. I got you. Either way,
I don't want to risk it. I'm selling them after the Falcons' performance this week.
Well, and Zach, you got a nose for this stuff. I think you and I and Henry, or maybe me, Henry, and Coach with you in the chat argued last year about Tyler Lockett. and Tyler Lockett had like a similar
Yeah.
start to the season as Amari Cooper's having right now, was just completely going off. And I said, I can't get rid of a guy that's that reliable right now. And you guys said he's Tyler Lockett. He's going to be irrelevant after like week 7 or whatever. And that's exactly what happened. So yeah, maybe, especially if you can get another 25-point game out of Amari Cooper, maybe you can get yourself a real nice piece as a trade piece for him. Something to definitely consider and something we'll keep an eye on moving forward. I just have one tight end I want to talk about here, and it is Big Bob Tonyan. We talked a little bit about him last week, and Zach Espinoza, I know you were very high on him last week, but I was looking into ESPN has him ranked as the number 18 tight end right now. And tight end is tough. We talked about it last week where it's like you have all these top guys and then just a smattering of middle guys who could have 0 points or 15 points at any given week. But if you look at Robert Tonyan's upcoming schedule, extremely, extremely favorable. You have New England this week, but then you go Giants, Jets, Washington. Obviously, Buffalo's a little tough. But then you get Detroit and Dallas. That takes you all the way up to week 11. Then it gets a little bit harder through there. But I think as someone, if you're someone who hates whatever tight end that you ended up drafting, or you're a guy who's streaming a different tight end every week, I think Robert Tonyan could kind of solidify that position for you for the next 6 to 8 weeks. And he's available in 81% of leagues rather. Zach Bruner, we had Luke on as our Packers expert last week. Now you step in, kind of take that role over. Espinoza very high on Tonyan. I just am looking at it from the fact that I hate trying to pick a new tight end every week, and he's got a very favorable schedule. You got anything against Tonyan here? You think he's worth a guy worth a start here for the next bunch of weeks?
Well, the Packers tight ends are about to get a little bit better just because with the tackles coming back now for the Packers, Green Bay's been using those tight ends to chip first, and then since the offensive line's been so bad after you chip, they haven't even had enough time to run routes. So now with the tackles back, there should be time. They'll get a little bit better. Play action will be better. But the Packers don't use their tight ends in a way where any of them are going to be worthwhile for fantasy. Like Tonyan's going to be at best like 40% of the offensive snaps. That's in a perfect situation. He's probably going to be like a 33% of the snap guy a lot of the time. Like there's going to be zero consistency just because they love Tyler Davis. Mercedes Lewis is the only good blocker out of them. They need to use DeGuara. There's going to be some pressure from the top down to use him a little bit more. So, and obviously Tonyan, they signed him back on a 1-year deal. Like,
yeah,
they would love to have him back on the cheap next year. They don't need to show him off at all this year. Like that's how the Packers work. It's stupid, but yeah.
Yeah, that's very true. That's very true. Kind of watching out for their own pocketbook and their own, if you don't let a guy go out and score 10 touchdowns, he's probably not going to run away from you in free agency. So I guess that's a pretty good point. Espinoza, we heard your thoughts on him last week. But I'll throw this. I got another Packers question that I'll throw at you. We also talked about the Packers receiving core as a whole. Luke basically said, junk them all. None of them are worth anything. And then Romeo Doubs goes out, has himself a week. Now, I think he's going to have a huge regression week this week against New England. I just don't see the rookie coming out and dominating a New England defense, especially 2 weeks in a row. But I think if you're going to hold anybody, if you're going to stash anybody on this Packers offense, I mean, Lazard's a bit of a step above for me, but anybody else, a smattering of other players, I think Romeo Doubs is the guy that you should kind of maybe stash away and hold on to. But then it comes down to the decision, if I got Lazard and Doubs, which I do in a couple of leagues, and I'm sure a lot of other Packers fans might be in the same situation, fighting for a flex spot. Espinoza, first of all, give me your thoughts as an outsider on what you saw from Romeo Doubs last week. And then Bruner, I would love to know how you kind of navigate the Lazard versus Doubs situation on a week-by-week basis. Espinoza, we'll start with you.
What was Alan Lazard's stats from last week? 4 receptions, 45 yards, but how many targets did he get? Does anybody know off the top of their head? Trying to find it.
He had about as many as Doubs did. I got it right here. He had 6 targets.
If you're asking me, I don't really know anything about the Packers, but based off of my memory from the highlights that I saw, Lazard's the bigger wide receiver, right? Out of the two,
he's got size.
They're
He's a
both the
little
same
bit
size.
taller, and yeah.
If you ask me, it's always safer to go with that more traditional wide receiver build and bully DBs in the end zone. I think Lazard had a touchdown last week. I don't know how it came. If it was something like that, it was a deep pass.
He's had one in each of the last 2 weeks. He scored against Chicago and Tampa Bay.
Then I think that's the safer pick. I mean, if he's going to be the more traditional wide receiver in a traditional offense like the Packers, I mean, Aaron Jones isn't playing too well. The wide receivers as a whole is a question mark. And if he is that traditional build, then I'm going to go with the traditional fit.
And he obviously has a ton more experience with Aaron Rodgers. But Zach, like I said, a lot of Packers fans probably in this position where they do have both of these guys. They were both available way late. Would you recommend going out and picking up Dobbs? And then, like I said, how would you navigate the Lazard versus Dobbs fighting for a flex spot type thing? How do you even predict that on a week-to-week basis?
Yeah, if you have a roster spot on your bench where you're really not using for anything, like you use one spot for a potential breakout guy, then go with Dobbs there, because Dobbs very clearly has the highest ceiling out of any of the Packers receivers. Big, hyper athletic, really good catcher, catches with his hands, which is a rarity in Green Bay for the past couple decades, really. Yeah, I mean, to the point where Aaron Rodgers actually, that's his biggest compliment of him, that he catches with his hands, which means he can throw it wherever he wants. He has the potential to break out. He's very clearly the number 2 wide receiver, and I think he'll continue to be. But even if you go back and watch every Romeo Dobbs highlight from last week, pretty sure every single time Allen Lazard was ahead of him blocking on the play. Like, Allen Lazard is an every down guy because he's a good blocker. And the stat that doesn't show up is his improvisational skills with Aaron Rodgers is off the chart. And that's why he's going to get so many touchdowns. We see it with Jordy Nelson. We saw with Devontae. We've seen it with James Jones. When plays break down in the red zone, Rodgers, Allen Lazard works back to Rodgers. He's going to continue to get a bunch of touchdowns. And it's going to pay out very well in the sports books for the people who bet over 5 touchdowns for Allen Lazard this year, me included. So, I think Allen Lazard is going to be the better guy to hold, to have, if you have to start somebody right now. But, if you say who has the potential to have more 100-yard games the rest of the way, that's very clearly Romeo Dobbs for me.
Sure. I think Dobbs, too, is a guy, especially if you're in, let's say, a keeper league where you're not allowed to keep anybody above a 6th or 7th rounder or whatever. He's a guy that you could just stash and just hope next year because, like Zach said, the raw athleticism, a ton of talent. And I think next year could be a monstrous year. But, yeah, I think you said it perfectly as far as navigating this year. Allen Lazard, too, by the way, 5 touchdowns. He's already got 2 under his belt. I would put my life on it that at some point this year he has a 2-touchdown game. So that's already at 4. You just got to find one other touchdown over 14 weeks. That's a great bet. Wish I would have known about that one.
He had more than that last year. It made no sense. We were doing the stream. We're like, okay, I'm going to bet that alongside my Lamar Jackson MVP bet. And I'm liking both right now.
There you go. The future king. All right, I only got one other thing I jotted down here, and then we can talk about whatever else. We got probably 15 minutes before we're going to get off here and go watch some what should be a great football game. We're going to talk about that in a second. If you got any more questions out there listening in the chat, please, now's the time. Throw them at us. I do want to talk just a little bit about QBs. We don't have to get too in depth here, but for those who are starting or debating starting Tua tonight, how concerning is this injury, short week? Is there just no concern because of who he plays with, where it's like, hey, all he has to do is just chuck it 1 yard further than the DB and he's going to be all right? Or is there actual concern? And should you be considering benching Tua tonight? I guess we'll start there. I got 2 other things, but what's the level of concern, Espinoza, on Tua tonight? Is there anybody, is it severe enough that you're going to start, like I said, a Marcus Mariota, a Jared Goff, a guy like that instead of Tua tonight?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I don't even know how he's playing. The NFLPA investigation into his concussion is yet to come to their results. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but playing football, but I never got hit in the back and then wobbled like that. I've definitely seen some people get woozy from getting hit in the head. I don't think it makes sense for that back hit. If he is playing tonight, if he somehow magically goes out there, I don't know if he is. I don't know how I might start him. I don't think I can't imagine taking that kind of an injury and then asking him to throw the ball 25 plus games at that. To me, 25 passes is a little bit scary for Miami if they're going to ask that of him.
On a short week too, and I believe you can get over 0.5 Tua interceptions for a reasonable number. It's only like minus 130 or somewhere in that ballpark. I looked at it. What is it?
I said you sure can because I took it.
Yeah. There you go. And it seems like, injured, and maybe he's going to try and force the ball downfield. He underthrows a ball, easy pick. Like that seems like a pretty solid bet. And I'm surprised it's not like minus 200 or something like that. Zach, are you risking it tonight because you still think he can get you that 18 to 20 points, or are you looking elsewhere on the waiver wire?
Well, first off, that interception prop is also on Prize Picks, which is the sponsor. Hit the link in the description because I have it on there as well. My biggest thing is maybe it's a back injury, but I'm not sure why everyone's like, oh, don't worry about Tua. It was just a back injury. I'm not happy with a back injury. Like, what are we doing? I have him at 11th. I'm lower on him than the consensus. I'd like to bring him even lower. I'm willing to start Mariota over him, but the person I have over him is Jared Goff. Like, you could probably pick up Jared Goff and start him. I have him at 9th this week. So I'm looking for any way out from Tua at this point. I also dislike him, though, so I'm biased.
I don't think even, you can be as biased as can be. I don't think that's an incorrect take, especially on a short week. I think everybody's just been so enthralled with what he did the first few weeks and the players that he has to throw to. But I totally agree. Jared Goff is like probably my number one sleeper pick this week. I think he's got a very favorable matchup. The Lions are scoring I think the second most points in the league or something right now. That offense is really humming. I like Jared Goff a lot this week, and I like him more than Marcus Mariota just because Mariota's playing a pretty a tougher defense. But I also in the camp of there are guys available in most leagues who you're going to be better off starting than Tua. But I do think Tua is going to cash that over half interception tonight, so we'll thank him ahead of time for that. And of course, you're going to have to if you have Tua, you're going to have to make that decision in the next 10 minutes or so. So maybe we should have talked about it a little earlier, but I think there's better options than Tua this week. In that same vein, we already talked about Mariota. I think he's a perfectly capable starter or streamer, especially right now. Justin Herbert is the last guy I want to talk about, kind of like Tua. He gave the effort last week. The team kind of got stomped. But are we going to see more of the Justin Herbert we saw in week 1 and 2 this week, or is it going to be more of kind of the lingering issues in what we saw in week 3? I mean, Herbert's still projected like 24 points or something because he's Justin Herbert. But is he a guy that you're willing to start a Jared Goff or a Marcus Mariota over? Bruner.
As long as Keenan Allen plays, I'm cool with starting Justin Herbert. It's also he plays the Texans, so I'm really not afraid of the Texans. So I'm going with Justin
that's
Herbert.
The one catch.
Fire him.
Yeah, that's the one caveat right there, where it's like the Jags are obviously much better than the Texans this year, and I think you play two subpar teams in a row. Not that the Jags are that bad, but two teams that are beneath you in a row, and you kind of shit the bed on one of them. I think the next week's kind of a bounce back week, even if your quarterback is all beat up. And the Chargers have yet to have that staple game. A lot of people were picking them to win their division. A lot of people saying, the Chiefs are going to miss the playoffs, blah, blah, this and that. It's the Chargers time, and they have not had that staple game. They have not looked like the team they were supposed to be. If you can't do it against the Texans this week, I just don't know when it's coming. So I'm rolling the dice on Justin Herbert. Espinoza, your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't even know why Herbert is playing in Houston. I mean, you could have made the argument with Jacksonville too, because nobody saw that. Hats off to Jacksonville for that win. But yeah, it's Justin Herbert. It's Houston. I'm not talking about Houston, and that's nothing against them or any of their players. They just don't have a household name on defense. Davis Mills is a question mark at franchise quarterback for their offense. I'm going to take Justin Herbert. I'd even take Justin Herbert and a solo Mike Evans over Houston.
So one other thing, I think Keenan Allen missed a couple days of practice this week as well. And he missed the first, 2 weeks or 2 out of the last 3 weeks, whatever it is. But Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, obviously he's a guy that can step in and, go for 120 and a couple touchdowns on his first week back. We've seen him do it plenty of times before. If he's playing, I'm starting him. Kind of comes down to that. Espinoza, did you bring anything that you wanted to touch on? We covered kind of a big smattering of things tonight, but anything specifically you want to touch on, or otherwise we're going to talk Thursday Night Football for just a couple minutes here before we hop off?
The only thing that comes to my mind is I just wanted to get your guys' opinion. Matthew Stafford, start or sit?
I'm sitting him this
against
week.
The 49ers. I think that there's better options this week as well. I know Coach in his article has Matthew Stafford as a sit this week. Zach, what are your thoughts?
I'm sitting him. I don't really want to trust that offensive line against the 49ers.
And the 49ers are kind – go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. You go.
I was just going to say the 49ers are kind of in a desperation spot right now. They've had the Rams number at home in the last few years. If they lose this game, they're dropping to 1-3. The future is completely up in the air with Trey Lance, Jimmy Garoppolo, all of that. But you don't want to drop to 1-3 on top of that. I think the defense is going to show up to play and kind of help their offense out. And I like the Niners to win that game.
Ooh, nice. Well, that's all I got, fellas.
All right. Well, like I told you, Zach, off air, we're going to start talking. I know you're not a huge gambling guy, but I'll take this opportunity to teach you a little bit. Since we don't really get a chance to talk about Thursday Night Football from a gambling standpoint on any of these streams, I figured we'll just end these streams with like a minute or two of gambling banter and just kind of keep a season-long record. I went 0-2 last week. I was on Pittsburgh and the under. Of course, the over cashed on that crazy last-second play. Pittsburgh played their way out of it in the second half. I still think Pittsburgh's the right side in that game, but whatever. I go 0-2. Zach, you had Pittsburgh in the over, so you went 1-1. This week, we got a 3.5-point spread. Bengals are favored at home. 48.5 is the total. I thought early this week everyone and their mother was going to be on the Dolphins. Now, of course, Tua's injury changes some things, but it was insane to me how many people I saw on the Bengals and all the love for the Bengals. So therefore, I think I have to take the Dolphins here. I think I just have to take the Dolphins and see what happens. But I'm also going to take the under. I think both these off. I think Cincinnati figured out a little bit on offense last week, and the Dolphins offense has just been unstoppable. Now you're on short weeks with an injured quarterback on one side, a bad offensive line on the other side. The last time these two teams played, it was a final score of 46-41 back in 2019, Alabama against LSU as number 2 and number 3 teams in the country. So clearly these quarterbacks can light it up, but that was a different time, a different situation. I think here on Thursday Night Football, we see under 48.5, and I have to take the Dolphins. Bruner, you obviously are a little bit more versed in gambling than Zach Espinoza, so we'll go to you to kind of jive off that. What do you think of the under, first of all, and then which side are you taking?
I like the under because I think the Bengals are going to be running the ball pretty well this game. I think they need to get Joe Mixon finally going. Dolphins just came off a game where their defense was on the field for 90 plays, literally 40 minutes in terribly hot weather. Then they get uprooted out of a hurricane, flown to Cincinnati. I think the defense is going to struggle. I think the defensive line is going to struggle. And I think the Bengals are finally going to be able to run the football a little bit in this game. So I think it's going to lead to a little bit more long drives. And to your point with the Tua field goal or Tua interception, I think that's going to be losing some drives there. I think we see at least a couple missed field goals in this game, as is the Thursday Night Football way, it seems like, over the past few years. So, yeah, I like the Bengals to cover, and I do like the under. I just think the Bengals – I hate both of these teams. It really hurts me to talk about these teams. But I can't – Dolphins defense isn't good. They're not good. So why would playing 40 minutes on Sunday help them? That's where I'm at.
Yeah, and like I said, early in the week, I was like, oh, this is going to be, pretty easy Bengals bet. And then the more I looked at it, the line's screaming Bengals, the public's on the Bengals, everybody's on the Bengals. I'm going to be mad at myself if I take the Bengals and, they don't even come close, or it's a 1-point game or whatever. Now, 3.5 is a tricky spread in the first place, but I'm just going to roll with the Dolphins and hope for my sake that the Bengals, because I have a big bet on the Bengals making the playoffs, so I need the Bengals to win here. But I hope it's on like a last-second McPherson 55-yard bomb or something like that. That would be ideal for me. Espinoza, this is your first kind of adventure into gambling here. Give me your side and your total. Zach and I are both on the under, but on opposite sides.
Ooh, you know what? I'm going to agree with you on the sides from my understanding, but you know what? For the sake of viewership and how committed to the organization I am, I'm going to propose something. I'm going to go for the over because you guys are going under. And if I'm wrong, I have to eat a slice of humble pie. That I'm wrong. And we'll let the audience decide. How about that? Up in the ante. Right. Humble pie.
All right.
Audience picks, just as long as it's not like toenails. Just disgusting food combinations.
Fair.
Mayonnaise with coffee. I'll do it.
All right. We'll see. We'll come up with our very own version of humble pie. But so you said you're with. Are you taking the Dolphins or the Bengals for the side? You're on the over.
Ooh, I'm taking Cincy. I believe in Joe Burrow. Joe Shiesty.
All right. So you two are on Cincy. I am on the Dolphins. We got one last real quick question here, and then we will leave you to some Thursday night football. Need to start 2 Lockett, Judy, or Renfro. Also need to start 2 Tannehill, Cousins, and Wilson. The quarterbacks. Let's dive into the receivers real fast first. Lockett, Judy, and Renfro. I'm a believer in Renfro. I don't know why. I got him in almost every league. I got him in my dynasty league. He keeps fumbling. He's, whatever. I like Renfro. I'm probably going to keep starting him, especially if Derek Carr will continue to move the ball around instead of the 19 targets for Adams week 1 or whatever. I like Renfro. We've already talked about Judy's problems, and Tyler Lockett he doesn't. You can say what you want about Geno, but he doesn't really have a quarterback right now. And I think that Seattle's going to struggle this week. I think they're finally going to hit that. They're just going to be the team that they were supposed to be coming into the season this week. I think they're going to be really bad on offense. But I don't like Jerry Jeudy either. So I'm voting Renfro. I'll leave the other 2 up to debate here. If you guys just want to go through it real quick. Espinoza, who do you like?
Jeudy, and Renfro.
All right. I'm sitting Renfro 100%. I wouldn't touch him. I'd drop him. Right. How about that?
Easy enough. I decided to drop Darnell Mooney instead of Hunter Renfro, and I don't regret that at all. So,
no.
Also need to start 2 Tannehill, Cousins, or Wilson. I like the Vikings this weekend to cover. I think Cousins will play well. I would say Cousins, and maybe I just don't like Russell Wilson at all right now, but Tannehill also gets 5 points a week a lot of the time. I like Kirk Cousins. What do you guys think between Tannehill and Wilson?
I'm sitting Tannehill for the next question because he has to make it super quick. I'd start Kyler Murray over Tua.
Oh, yeah, 100%. 100%. I think we already laid out all the issues with Tua, and I think it's a get right, show what you're made of game for the Cardinals this weekend as well. I think Kyler Murray's going to play well. I think they're going to beat the Carolina Panthers handily, and I don't understand how they're getting points in that game. But sober thoughts, Tannehill and Cousins, just gut feeling. I think Cousins for sure, and then I like Tannehill. Tennessee needs to be good. Tennessee needs to win. I like Tannehill. If you guys got any other final thoughts, or otherwise we will bounce here, kick off in just a few minutes.
I agree with everything.
All right, perfect. Make sure you check out Prize Picks. over at prizepicks.com. Use the code FLURRY, FLURRY, and you're going to get a deposit match up to $100. If you go do it quick, you can ride the over on Tua interceptions with Zach and win some easy money. All right, thanks, everybody. We appreciate – what's up?
Wait. Before we go, send in pie.
Beautiful. Yes. Hit up Zach. Your Twitter is at JACHRY3.
Yeah, Jack.
And yep, and you see mine. So hit us up and we will take those submissions. Sober Thoughts says thank you. You are welcome. Thank you to all of you. Appreciate it. We'll be back next week. Zach and I think, are going to be live tomorrow, at least me, and talk gambling. We're going to run through the whole slate. Very, very excited for that. First gambling stream of the year, right here on these same channels tomorrow. Enjoy the game, everybody.